She said it in her sleep. 3 syllables. Soft. Gentle. Like a sigh curling out of her lips before drifting back into silence. It wasn't my name. I remember sitting there on the edge of the bed, one sock on, one in my hand, frozen in place. The bedroom was dimly lit by the flicker of a dying street lamp outside. Her hair was tangled on the pillow. She looked peaceful, and I hated that. You don't forget that kind of thing. You don't forget the way your stomach drops, how your ears suddenly feel like they're ringing even though the world is dead quiet. I don't even think I blinked for a full minute. I just sat there, staring at the wall like it had answers. My name is Trent, by the way. Not that it mattered that night. Apparently, my name was Calder in her dreams. Calder. I'd never heard of him. Never met him. But in that moment, he became more real than me. More alive than our 11-year marriage. More wanted. That night, I didn't wake her. I didn't ask questions. I just finished putting on my sock, walked down the hallway, and stood in the kitchen for over 2 hours, holding on to the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. My knees locked. My back hurt. But I couldn't move. I was terrified that if I sat down, I'd scream. The next day, I did what I always do. I kept it together. I made her coffee. I packed her lunch. I even helped her find her phone charger. She kissed me on the forehead and told me to have a mellow day. Mellow. That was Tuesday. By Friday, I was gone. No confrontation. No suitcase thrown down the stairs moment. No yelling. Just gone. I left her a voicemail she wouldn't get until hours later. Don't call me. Don't try to explain. I can't unhear what I heard. I turned off my phone. Deleted every cloud backup. Transferred the last bit of my freelance pay to a private account. Took an overnight bus out of the city, then a train, then another bus. I picked towns by flipping a coin and sleeping in station lobbies. I shaved my beard. Changed my glasses. Burned our wedding album in a garbage can behind a closed-down pharmacy. No one followed. No one cared. Or so I thought. Until last night, when someone slipped a note under the cabin door. In the same handwriting as our anniversary cards. My name, underlined. And one sentence that's been clawing at my brain since I read it. You've been gone long enough. I need to see you. She found me. And I wish to God she hadn't. I didn't open the door right away. I didn't even touch the note at first. I just stood there in my socks, staring at it like it might burst into flames. It was folded in thirds, like something left under a windshield wiper. No envelope. No signature. Just that handwriting I knew too well, soft loops in the Y's and a nervous hesitation in the T's, like she'd always been unsure about crossing lines. I swear I could smell her on the paper. That lavender vanilla stuff she used to wear when we still pretended to like each other. The scent brought back this one specific memory I didn't even know I still had. Her humming in the bathroom, barefoot, tracing hearts in the condensation on the mirror while I pretended to be asleep because I didn't know how to be close to her anymore. I hated that memory. I hated that she could still haunt me through a damn note. I picked it up slowly, as if maybe the words would change if I waited long enough. They didn't. Same sentence. 7 words. 1 period. You've been gone long enough. I need to see you. She didn't even ask. Just declared it. I looked outside through the blinds, careful not to shift them too much. The cabin's deep in a wooded patch of nowhere, surrounded by trees and frost and the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. No footprints in the snow. No car engine humming in the distance. No shadow ducking behind trees. If she'd come, she was long gone now. Or watching from somewhere I couldn't see. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the corner chair by the window with a blanket around my shoulders and the fireplace quietly dying behind me. I thought I'd buried her, not literally, I'm not that dramatic, but the version of her that could still affect me. I thought disappearing would finally cut the cord that kept me tethered to who I was when I was with her. Silent, soft-spoken, apologizing for things I hadn't done just to keep her from rolling her eyes. I didn't even know who I was anymore. I still don't. By sunrise, the note was still in my hand, crumpled at the corners from hours of fidgeting. I didn't plan to write back, but I did. Something small. Something sharp. Just 6 words scratched onto the back of a grocery receipt. Tell him I said congratulations, called her. I knew she'd understand it. I didn't even know where to send it. I just tucked it under the loose corner of the porch railing in case she came back. Pathetic, right? Hoping she'd return just so I could have the final word, even if I wasn't brave enough to say it to her face. I tried to spend the rest of the day normal. Chopping wood. Fixing the crooked kitchen shelf. Rethreading the generator line. But everything felt different, like someone had rearranged the air inside my walls while I slept. I kept checking the front window, kept thinking I heard soft crunches in the snow, kept imagining her face just out of frame, watching, waiting, smiling. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I hiked into town. It took nearly 2 hours. I hadn't been down that trail in months. I used to go there for supplies, but I'd been stockpiling to avoid people. Now I was walking straight toward them. Every step felt like peeling off a scab. The lights of the town glowed like they were mocking me. Warmth, life, movement, all the things I'd sworn off. At the diner, I ordered a slice of apple pie and coffee. The waitress didn't recognize me. Good. I didn't recognize myself either. I pulled out my notepad and started to write, just random thoughts at first. Then sentences. Then a plan. If she really tracked me here, she had help. I'd covered my trail too well. No social media. No cards. No contact with anyone. So who told her? And more importantly, why now? It had been 14 months since I left. Not a word until that note. And now she needed to see me? For what? What had changed? And that's when it hit me. She wasn't here because she missed me. She was here because something was wrong. I didn't go back to the cabin that night. Something about the note, the silence, the way my breath fogged against the diner window, it all felt wrong. I watched the snowflakes melt on the glass and imagined her standing where I sat now, asking the same questions I was too afraid to answer. Why here? Why now? Why me? After hours of sitting in that corner booth, nursing a coffee that had gone cold twice, I paid in cash and slipped out the back exit. I didn't want to walk past the front again, didn't want to risk the off chance that maybe, just maybe, she was watching from across the street. It wasn't paranoia. It was gut. Instead of taking the trail straight home, I walked deeper into town, past the general store, past the mechanic's lot, past the quiet little post office that only opened 3 days a week. I didn't have a destination. I just didn't want to be found again. I ended up at the motel. It's not even a real motel. Just 3 rooms attached to the back of a closed-down antique shop. I knew the woman who ran it, old Miss Irma. She once sold me a space heater for $5 and never asked my name. That's why I trusted her. She didn't flinch when she opened the door and saw me standing there in the snow, coat open, eyes hollow. She didn't say anything either, just handed me a rusted key and pointed to room 2. I nodded. No questions. Just quiet, heavy understanding. Inside, the room smelled like mothballs and dust. The sheets were stiff. The lamp flickered. It was perfect. It was untouched. And most of all, it was unknown. I didn't sleep. Again, I stared at the ceiling for hours, then the wall, then the inside of my palms like maybe they could tell me something. I thought about the life I left. The version of me who used to check the weather on his phone, who used to pack her lunch before she went to work. The version of me who still wore a wedding ring. I checked my backpack. I hadn't worn that ring in 14 months, but I'd never thrown it away. It was still there, tucked inside a sock, as if I needed proof that it had all happened. That she had existed. That I had once been someone worth looking for. I finally fell asleep around 5 a.m. And when I woke, the sky was gray, the world was still, and there was a noise outside my door. 3 soft knocks. Not hard. Not urgent. Just enough to make my skin crawl. I didn't move. Not right away. I just lay there in the bed, staring at the ceiling like if I blinked too fast, the sound would vanish, and I'd convince myself it was nothing. But then there was another knock, not on the door this time, but on the window. Soft. Fingertips. I sat up too fast and felt a spike of dizziness shoot behind my eyes. I scrambled to the corner of the room, grabbing the rusted lamp like it was a weapon. It wasn't bravery, it was panic disguised as instinct. I waited, counted to 60. Nothing. Then I crept toward the window and pulled back the curtain. No one. But taped to the glass, barely hanging on through the frost, was another note. Same handwriting. Same faint lavender scent. This one said, "If you're afraid, you should be. You weren't supposed to leave." I stumbled back. My knees hit the edge of the bed, and I sat down hard. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. I wanted to believe it was a trick, that someone else was doing this. But no one knew where I was. No one except her. And now the game had changed. She wasn't just here to talk. She was here because I left something unfinished. Something I didn't know I'd left behind. The worst part wasn't the note. It was what it was taped with. Lip balm. That same mint lavender hybrid she used for years, the kind that left faint oil smears on her coffee mugs and pillowcases. It was always so distinctly her. When I touched the paper and my fingertips came away sticky and cold, I knew this wasn't just symbolic. She was close. Too close. Recent. Watching me while I slept, maybe. Testing the lock on the door. Breathing against the window before sunrise. I sat on the bed and reread her words over and over. If you're afraid, you should be. You weren't supposed to leave. I don't know if it was a threat or a confession. I don't know if she meant to scare me or remind me that she still had power over me. Either way, it worked. Every hair on my arm stood up. I didn't stay the night again. I packed my things, left a 20 on the dresser for Irma, and slipped out the back, walking with my head low and my shoulders hunched like I could somehow make myself invisible. I cut through an alley and took the long trail back to the cabin, avoiding the road altogether. I didn't want to be seen, not even by animals. I didn't want anything to know I still existed. By the time I got home, my boots were soaked and my fingers were numb. I dropped my bag inside the front door and locked it behind me, latch, bolt, chain. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't even sit down. I went straight to the crawl space. There was only one reason she could have tracked me down. One reason she would leave those notes with that perfume. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about the journal. During the last 6 months of our marriage, right around the time her lies began to outnumber our real conversations, I started keeping a record. Not of her cheating. I still didn't have hard proof back then. But I wrote everything else down. Not just facts, feelings. Things she said that didn't line up. Her new passwords. Her sudden hatred of my favorite meals. A phone number scribbled on the back of a dry cleaning receipt that she swore she didn't recognize. I never told her about the journal. Never hinted. I kept it under the floorboards, wrapped in an old sweater, buried in an unlabeled box. I brought it with me when I vanished, mostly out of spite. It felt like the only piece of the story that was mine. And now, I wasn't so sure it still was. The floorboards creaked as I pried them open. The cold hit me immediately, not just from the crawl space, but from the realization that the box had been moved. Not taken, just disturbed. Like someone had lifted it, opened it, and put it back in the wrong orientation. I opened the lid. The journal was still there, but the last page had been torn out. And inside the box, tucked between the pages, was something I hadn't seen in years, a photograph of Jolene and me on our anniversary, standing beside a waterfall in Maine, holding hands. But this version, this photo had something extra. A red X drawn over my face. And on the back, scribbled in the same lavender ink she used for every love letter she'd ever written me, were 5 words I can't unread no matter how hard I try. You saw too much. Stop digging. I don't know what I was supposed to see back then, but I think I'm starting to understand what she's willing to do to keep it buried. I don't remember dropping the photo, but I must have. I only realized I was standing there shaking when I heard the soft thud of it hitting the floorboards. I didn't move for a while. Just stood over it like it might crawl away if I turned my back. The red X stared up at me from that glossy surface like a warning label, not just a symbol of how little I mattered to her, but a message. I'm not just here. I've been watching you. I've been closer than you ever knew. For a moment, I actually thought I might vomit. My hands were clammy, and my legs felt like they didn't belong to me. All I could hear was my own pulse crashing in my ears like a warning siren, over and over. That photo wasn't just something she left to mess with me, it was proof. Proof that she'd been inside. Proof that the locks I changed 3 times hadn't kept her out. Proof that I was never really alone, even here, in the middle of nowhere. I didn't sleep again that night. I don't even remember changing clothes or brushing my teeth. I sat in the far corner of the cabin with every light off, back against the cold wooden wall, clutching the fireplace poker like a weapon, eyes darting between the windows. Every branch that scratched against the glass, every creak of the foundation in the wind, felt like a footstep. And even though I knew it was probably irrational, even though I'd triple-locked everything and checked the attic and crawl space twice, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being studied. Like I was a specimen under glass. The worst part was knowing I didn't understand why. Why come all this way, all this time later, just to leave cryptic notes and play mind games? Why not just knock on the door like a person if she wanted to talk? Or yell at me? Or scream? Or cry? Or demand closure? But this was something else. This was about control. And if Jolene taught me anything in our 11 years of marriage, it was that she never let go of control. Not ever. Around 3 a.m., I went back to the box. I needed to be sure about the journal, the box, the crawl space, everything. I turned every page of that journal again, checking for fingerprints, new markings, or gaps in my notes. The torn page was gone, cleanly removed, like it had been sliced with a knife. That unnerved me. I didn't remember what I wrote on that final page. Something about the week she went to Santa Fe alone or claimed to. I'd always suspected she hadn't been alone. There were no photos from that trip. No receipts. Just a tan line that didn't match the weather report. I flipped through to see if anything else was off. And that's when I saw it. A line I never wrote. It was buried halfway through a page dated 8 months before I left her, back when we were still doing okay. My handwriting, but I hadn't written it. I knew because I had a habit of writing with my right hand but slanting left. This line was upright, centered. Almost too neat. You're not the only one watching. That was it. No context. No punctuation. Just slipped between two entries like it had always been there. I read it 3 times. 4. I held the page up to the light to make sure it wasn't just a smear or old pencil mark. But no, it was real. Ink. Mine, but not mine. At this point, something shifted in me. Up until now, I thought she was playing some sick game, that she'd been obsessed, maybe angry I vanished, maybe trying to pull me back so she could hurt me one last time with whatever apology or half-truth she was clinging to. But now, I wasn't sure she was acting alone, or even rational. This felt bigger, more layered, more dangerous. I needed answers, but I also knew I couldn't get them from her, not directly. Not without risking whatever sanity I still had left. So I made a decision I swore I never would. I powered up the old burner phone I'd kept in a sealed metal box under the porch, one I never used, never told anyone about. It took 10 minutes to boot. The screen was cracked. The battery barely held a charge. But I only needed it to do one thing. Call August. August was my brother's best friend growing up. He was the kind of guy you only called when things went sideways, not because he was trustworthy, but because he was curious. Obsessively curious. He used to work IT for a private surveillance firm before going completely off the grid after a messy whistleblower situation involving a city councilman and a very expensive hotel room. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 5 years. He answered on the 3rd ring with a gravelly, half-awake, "What?" "It's Trent," I said. "I need a favor." There was a pause, then a rustle. "You're supposed to be dead." "I know," I whispered. "But someone's watching me. And it's not just her." The silence after I said her name felt like standing in a frozen lake. No sound, just the distant pressure of something massive beneath the surface. August didn't ask who I meant. He didn't need to. He'd met Jolene once. That was enough. He used to joke she had eyes like closed doors, pretty, but you'd never know what was behind them. I used to think that was poetic. Now it just felt accurate. He exhaled into the phone and muttered, "Tell me everything. But first, are you calling from anything she could trace?" I told him about the burner, the isolation, the journal, the photograph with the red X, the notes written in that lavender ink. I told him about the crawl space being disturbed, the missing journal page, and the knock at the window. I didn't mention how many times I'd cried in the dark this week. I didn't mention the way my own name had started to feel like a lie. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end. Then August said, "This sounds insane, but I think you're not the first." I blinked. "The first what?" "To go off-grid after her," he said slowly. "Listen, I've looked into a lot of strange crap over the years, fake IDs, digital ghosts, surveillance blackouts. But about 6 months ago, I started following a string of weird coincidences that all led back to a small group of people, men, mostly, who vanished without legal closure. Like you. Quiet divorces. No social media. No digital trail. In every case, the only connection was a woman, with aliases that all sounded too polished, too normal. Different names, but the same story. My throat went dry. "Are you saying she's done this before?" "I don't know," August said, voice low. "But I think you stumbled into something bigger than cheating and broken vows." He asked if I could send him a scan of the journal, even just a few pages, so he could analyze the ink, handwriting patterns, any sign of tampering or overlays. I promised I would, but only through physical mail. I wasn't taking any chances. August gave me a P.O. box number in Colorado and told me to use gloves when I handled the package. "Assume everything is being watched," he said. "Even if it's not. That's how you stay alive." That phrase, "stay alive," sat heavy in my gut. This was supposed to be about heartbreak, sadness, regret. But now we were talking in terms of survival. After the call, I packed a small bag and took the journal, wrapped tight in wax paper and duct tape. I also grabbed the torn photograph, the 2 notes she left, and the shirt I'd been wearing the night I found the second message, all of it sealed in a waterproof envelope. I would walk to the next town over, not the one she'd already found, and mail it from there. But as I turned to leave, something stopped me. On the cabin floor, where the journal box had been, there was a footprint. Not mine. Smaller. Narrower. The outline of a boot I didn't own. And beside it, wedged just beneath the floorboard, was something that hadn't been there yesterday, a silver key. Old, rusted, with a heart-shaped bow and the number 11 etched into its teeth. No tag. No explanation. Just the key. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I photographed it with my old disposable camera and slid it into a Ziploc. I didn't know what it opened. I didn't know what 11 meant. But if Jolene had left it, then it wasn't random. Later that afternoon, as I hiked toward the next town, I passed a gas station. I hadn't been there in months, but the same teenage clerk was behind the counter, chewing gum and scrolling through his phone. I kept my head low, grabbed a bottle of water and a protein bar, and tried to leave without conversation. But just as I was stepping outside, he called out, "Hey, man, you still with that tall lady with the weird smile?" I froze. "What?" I asked without turning around. He shrugged. "She was here last week. Asked if I'd seen you. I told her I hadn't. But she left me something to give you in case you showed up." He reached under the counter and pulled out a sealed envelope. My name on the front, not Trent. My middle name. The one I never use. The one only she ever called me when she was furious. Elijah. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever I'd run from wasn't chasing me anymore. It was leading me somewhere. I didn't open the envelope for hours. I just held it. I don't know what I was expecting to feel: fear, dread, maybe rage, but what settled in me instead was something worse: recognition. The kind of recognition that lives in the pit of your stomach, the kind that says, "You've been here before." You just refuse to see it. The clerk didn't ask for money. He didn't even look curious. It was like he'd already forgotten I existed the moment I stepped out the door. That unsettled me more than anything. Was this routine now? Had she come through here more than once? I walked another 3 miles before I finally sat down beside an old dried-out creek bed and slit the top of the envelope open with a piece of splintered wood. The paper inside was thick, expensive. The kind she always used when she was trying to play someone smarter than she really was. Not scented this time. Not handwritten either. Typed. Just one page. It read, "You're not as hidden as you think. You left a longer trail than you realize. You said once you wanted to understand everything. This is your chance. The key unlocks what you buried, not what you ran from. Go back to where we were before we lied. Room 11. Bring the journal. Don't bring anyone else. You owe me that." That was it. No signature. No threats. No manipulation in tone. Just cold, direct, and disturbingly calm. I read it 3 times before stuffing it back in the envelope. Then I sat in the dirt for what must have been another hour, staring out at the cracked earth and thinking about what "before we lied" even meant. Because truthfully, I don't remember us ever being honest. From the beginning, Jolene played the part she thought I wanted, the affectionate, mysterious woman who made me feel less invisible. And I played along because I was tired of being alone. It was a performance we both agreed not to critique. But if there was a before, it had to be the inn. There was an old roadside motel 2 counties over, one we stayed at once, years ago, during a spontaneous road trip. The power went out that night. She lit 3 candles and told me a story about how her mother once disappeared for 6 days and returned with a new name and a different eye color. I'd laughed, assuming it was a metaphor or just one of her strange fictions. But that was the same night she asked me to keep secrets from my family. Small things, like where we'd gone, or what name she'd used when checking in. I hadn't thought about that night in years. The motel's name had slipped my memory. But I remembered the smell of the hallway, stale tobacco, and cinnamon. I remembered room 11 because the number on the door was faded, and Jolene had traced over it with lipstick while laughing hysterically, saying, "Let's make our mark." That was Jolene, always turning lies into jokes and jokes into control. If that's where she wanted me to go, room 11, then that's where I was going. But I wouldn't go unprepared. By the time I returned to the cabin, dusk had already blanketed the forest. Shadows stretched long through the trees, and every sound felt amplified: the crunch of leaves underfoot, the sharp hoot of an owl, the distant creak of wood shifting under snow. I didn't turn on any lights when I entered. I didn't want her to know I was back. If she was watching, and I had no doubt she was, then I needed to make her believe I was gone longer. I packed deliberately. The journal, wrapped in cloth and sealed in plastic. The silver key. The disposable camera. A flashlight, 2 protein bars, and the letter. I also took the photograph with the red X, folding it once and slipping it into my back pocket like a silent reminder of who she was or who she had become. Before I left, I opened the crawl space one more time, and that's when I found it. Tucked beneath the edge of the old sweater, barely visible in the darkness, was a second envelope. Smaller, sealed with red wax, not the kind you buy at a stationery store, but the old-fashioned kind, melted and stamped with a pattern. A pattern I recognized immediately. It was a fingerprint, pressed deep into the wax, smeared slightly but still clear enough to see the loops and ridges. I didn't open that envelope either. Not yet. Instead, I took a photo of it with the disposable camera and dropped it into a separate Ziploc. I'd send it to August once I reached the motel. Maybe he'd know how to lift the print, trace it, identify it. Because one thing was certain now, I wasn't just dealing with my ex-wife. There was someone else involved. And I had the gut-wrenching feeling that I had already met them once and never realized I was in the middle of a game I didn't even know I was playing. I left the cabin under cover of darkness, and I didn't look back. The road to the motel was narrower than I remembered, flanked by dying trees and forgotten billboards for tourist attractions that probably closed before the internet was invented. It felt like driving into a memory I wasn't sure belonged to me anymore. I kept the windows cracked just enough to hear if anyone was following, not because I thought they would, but because it's hard to unlearn the feeling of being hunted. When I finally reached the place, the sign was still hanging barely. Blue Haven Inn. 3 letters were missing. The parking lot was empty except for a rusted red pickup truck with no plates. The same tan siding. The same faded blue trim. I parked in the back, grabbed my bag, and walked toward room 11 without hesitation. If this was a trap, it was one I had chosen to walk into. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was almost identical to how I remembered it. Same dim lamp with the cracked shade. Same floral curtains. Same ugly orange armchair with cigarette burns in the cushion. But now, in the center of the bed, perfectly placed atop a folded towel, was a small leather box. And next to it, Jolene. She looked older. Not by much, but enough. The sharp confidence she used to wear like a mask was gone. In its place was something softer, exhaustion, maybe. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes were swollen like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't stand. Didn't speak. Just sat there with her hands folded in her lap. I didn't sit either. I didn't even put down my bag. I just stood in the doorway and said, "Why?" She blinked slowly, like she'd been waiting for that word. "Because I thought you were the one person who could understand." "Understand what?" I asked. "That it wasn't about you," she said quietly. "It never was." I could feel the anger bubbling, not violent, not loud, just old and sore, like an untreated bruise. "Then why the games? The notes? The photo? The key?" She nodded toward the box. "Open it." I didn't want to, but I did. Inside was the missing page from the journal, the one I hadn't remembered writing. And taped to it was a photograph I'd never seen before. It was Jolene and someone else. A man, much older, his arm around her. A smile frozen on both their faces. On the back of the photo was a date, 1996. Long before I met her. "That's my father," she said softly. "He wasn't a good man." I looked at the photo again, then at her. And suddenly I saw it, the same slope of the nose, the same tension in the shoulders. She'd always avoided talking about her family. Said they were complicated. I'd assumed she meant arguments or politics. I hadn't realized she meant survival. "When you left," she continued, "I thought I could handle what came next. But you took the journal. You took the only proof I had of the kind of woman I was trying not to become. And I got scared. Not because I lost you, though I did, but because without you." I stopped pretending. I lowered the photo. What was I supposed to see? That you were never the target. That you just saw too much. She stood now. Slowly. Cautiously. "I wasn't watching you to hurt you. I was watching to protect what little of me you kept safe. The parts one couldn't control. The pages you wrote. The secrets I wanted buried but knew I couldn't. For a long time, I didn't speak. I just stared at the woman I once promised to grow old with, the same woman I now barely recognized. There was sadness in her, yes, but also release. And in a strange way. I felt it too. She stepped closer, holding out the key. "I want you to take this," she said, "and decide what to do with it. There's a safety deposit box in Fairhill under my old name. It holds everything. My records. The truth. If you want to burn it all, I won't stop you." I didn't take the key. Not right away. Instead, I looked her in the eyes and asked, "What do you want from me?" She smiled, small and tired. "Nothing. Just forgiveness. Even if it's silent." And it was. I left the motel without a word. I didn't look back. I didn't take the key. I didn't need to. A week later, I mailed the journal to August, along with everything else, the notes, the envelope, even the fingerprint wax seal. He wrote back a short letter. Whatever storm you walked through, it's over. You chose peace. That's rare. Hold on to it. And I have. Now, I live farther north. Different name. Different job. I grow vegetables. I paint. I sit outside and listen to the wind instead of waiting for it to carry footsteps. Sometimes I wonder if Jolene is still out there, if she's still searching for something. But not me. We've both let go. And after all this time, I finally feel free.